Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at theDove.us. Welcome back. Well, it's always a delight to have with us Dave Dotterrer. He is a candidate for State Senate here in Southern Oregon, up against Alan Bates. And I just also would like to extend the invitation to Mr. Bates. Come on, Alan, come on the show and let's chat about the issues. And so you're always welcome to do that. Alan, or Dave, good to see you. And I know it's been hot and heavy, and now you're down to crunch time, about
Absolutely.
70 days away.
Absolutely.
How's it going?
Going good. Been to just shy of 9,000 doors already.
9,000 doors.
And I want to say that several people have said to me, hey, saw you on KDove, and they appreciate that. So
well,
that's great. That's great that they've done that.
Talking to 9,000 doors, at least knocking on 9,000 doors, talking to over 9,000 groups of people, what's the key issue that keeps bobbing to the top?
Jobs.
Jobs.
It's the economy, and it's the fact that if you look at Southern Oregon compared to the rest of the state, what you'll see is, as the Oregonian points out, you know, the rest of the state is slowly pulling itself out of this recession and doing okay, mediocre, but okay. But we're still going downhill. We're still losing jobs, and we're finding ourselves with, for example, wages 20% behind the rest of the state. And that's just got to change. And the state government needs to take that issue on, because you're really seeing the state economists talking about we're creating two economies in this state, the rural economies and the urban ones. The urban ones are doing okay, but you start looking at the rurals, and it's not good.
So what can the state do to help?
Well, there's a couple of things. If you talk to small business, and it's the small business folks that are behind my campaign, because they know that Southern Oregon is a small business area, and that's where the jobs are. You know, and when you talk to them, they'll tell you that this is not a business-friendly state. It's, you know, for example, the permitting process. Yeah. If you want to get a permit, you got to go to 5 or 6 different agencies. None of it's coordinated, and through the years, the legislature has written different statutes and different laws, and the agencies are trying to implement those. They're not working together. You know, the real leadership would be it would be the legislature taking hold of that issue and saying, okay, we're gonna address this issue of, if I want to get a permit, how do I walk through that process? How do I make that so it is business friendly? Because the whole idea is to make sure you meet the regulatory requirements, not to put people through this meat grinder. That's not the point. So. That's one issue. And one other thing I would mention too is that if you look at where the state of Oregon is putting its investment, you know, say the lottery funds that are meant for economic investment, if you look at where that money's going, it's not coming to Southern Oregon. It's not going to the rural areas. You're seeing, you know, for example, $12 million of lottery funds going to the Eugene bus system, and they claim that that's economic development. Well, that's great if you live in Eugene, you know, but that's not helping us down here. That's an example.
Well, we're seeing somewhat of a turnaround in the real estate market, but we're not seeing the growth in jobs. And yet, of all the places in the state of Oregon, Southern Oregon is still one of the most desirable places to live.
Absolutely.
So we got a problem here.
We really do. And I can tell you, the regulatory regime that you see that hurts small businesses hurts places like Southern Oregon more than it does anywhere else. It has a bigger impact. You talk to the business people, and they'll just tell you that. You know, if you're Nike, and you've got lawyers, and you've got this big staff, you can address these regulatory issues. You may not like them, but it's a problem. But you can work your way through them. But you know, if you're a company that's, you know, 2 people in the headquarters and 8 employees, and you have to work through the same regulations that Nike does, that just doesn't fit. We got to figure out a way to do that better.
Can the state get involved with counties and municipalities on creating some kind of business growth zones, even if it's a temporary thing, deferred rates?
Yeah, you can do that. Sure, you can do that. We ought to take a look at those things. Those things have been done by other states, and we have some economic zones that have been put together. They've been marginally successful. We don't do that in any, how should I say? And it's very ad hoc, you know. And what I saw in the legislature when I worked there was everybody talks about jobs, but when you try to get the legislature to sit down and say, okay, we're going to address the jobs issue, what are the 5 things we need to do, and what do we need to what statutes do we need to change, what are the new policies, and therefore what are the bills? You don't see that strategic, big picture, let's sit down and really address this issue. You see this very, very ad hoc idea that, well, let's pass this bill.
Yeah.
And but at the same moment they turn around and pass another bill that hurts business.
Yeah.
And that's got to stop.
All right, Cover Oregon's certainly a mess and very embarrassing, but it doesn't seem to be bothering people.
Well, it's interesting that nobody has brought it up on the doors or things like that. But my view is we got to look at that as a consistent part of the leadership failures we see within our state government, and that's what's got to change. That's the part of the problem that needs to be changed. This is how we've been doing business. It's got to change, and Cover Oregon is emblematic of that. Now we can go through under the details of it and everything, but that's my view, because the problem is that if you really look at most of these projects over the last 10, 20 years that the state of Oregon has done, this is the normal. I mean, this is the way we've done business in way too many instances.
All right, so administrative review on all these agencies is certainly up for consideration, but it never really seems to get done.
No. There's some very interesting ideas out there. Connecticut, for example, has a very, very set piece way of if there's a regulation or an administrative rule that is written, it does not go into effect until a joint committee of the state legislature gives it the thumbs up. There's a check and a balance. Now the legislature can't change that or can't tell them exactly what it's got to be, but they've got first right of refusal. So if you're an agency, now you know that, hey, if I write this rule or this regulation, I have to get it through the legislature and get the thumbs up from them. And if you talk to a lot of the legislators, they'll tell you that they write statutes and this is their intent, and then when it gets over to the agency, they sort of write the rules whatever they want to, and there's no recourse.
Right.
That's an example of how we need to change how we do business.
Could we implement that in Oregon?
Yes, and I can tell you Sal Esquivel has got a bill in to do exactly that. Okay.
Would that also include fees and license fees or service fees, or
Well, unfortunately, in some cases, the legislature's given away that responsibility to the agency, but most of the time, most of those fees have to come through the budget process, which is the right way to do it. The problem is the budget process doesn't look at them closely enough. There's way too many times that I watched in the legislatures, I worked the budget process, where those fees are just waved on through. The agency says, we need more money, so that's okay. And they do that. And again, those fees get passed on to the consumer ultimately.
Wow.
And that needs to be tightened up too.
What else are you hearing from the 9,000 doors you've knocked on?
I do hear from some people who are fed up with the political process that are saying, a pox on both parties and things. And I'll talk with them and talk with them and say, people will often say, well, the process is broken. No, the process isn't broken. What's broken is the people in the process, and that's what's got to change. If you want to change, the founding fathers put together a great process, and we use that same process in this state. Right. We don't want to change that process. What we want to do is you need to change the people that are working in that process.
All right, so how do we get voter participation? Because I think people are so disgusted and so tired, but at the same time, if we don't get people voting, it gets worse.
It does get worse. It really does. And I think what people need to do is listen to the candidates and say, okay, this matters. I mean, there are times when, and I've done this, and probably you have too, where you look at a particular race and you go, I'm not really particular. I don't know where I'm going to go on this, but I have always voted because I can't bring myself to leave one of those little bubbles empty. You know what I mean? Because one way or the other, it does matter. And even if I don't particularly agree with either one of them, if it's just even a little bit more for this guy, I go, it's better than the alternative.
Okay.
That's what you got to do.
Well, Dave, best to you. And again, people who want to get more information about you and your campaign, what do they do?
DaveDotterrer.com.
DaveDotterrer.com, and I'm sure we'll see you more between now and Election Day. And you only got another 1,000 doors or more to go, huh?
A couple thousand, more than that. Maybe 3,000.
That's to you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot.
We'll be right back.